right? Like,
don't think it mathematically. You won't come up to a conclusion.
no, sir,
Just
it's like a doubt I have because I didn't calculate P and F. I just used that formula.
yeah. So did you get the same percentage?
No.
Ideally, you should get the same thing because this P by F, we just substitute P by F from the material balance, nothing else.
So like I did not get the same percentage. I got one slightly higher and one slightly lower. So,
Yeah, this P by F, what we do, we basically P by F or R by F, we substitute you using the component material balance and the overall material balance, nothing else. So this should come same. Let us there would be some numerical error because the fraction will come, so it would come very close to this number.
Sir, I got the same thing. So
Yeah, the same.
54.89. So
Yeah,
54.89%.
54.89 and 54.9, it makes sense because even if you get 54.50 or something like that, that also makes sense uh, because of this numerical thing, you might not get exact same number, but somewhat close by. You got the logic behind it because P by F, what we
So,
are doing. Yeah.
so maybe because in both the part A and B, our product and reject stream is changing, but the fines will always be obtained in the underflow. So maybe that's why the tonnage does not change.
Yeah, this
And
is
the
what you.
efficiencies.
This is the answer for this one, which I asked, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you are almost close by. So the logic is like tonnage of fines that remain in the overflow, irrespective of whichever is the product or whichever is the reject. This will always remain same. There I am not specifying anything. Tonnage of fines that remains in the overflow. This doesn't say that which one is product or which one is reject. Because in both the cases I have just reversed the product and reject. But tonnage of fines that will always remain same as in overflow, irrespective of whichever is your product. Yeah. Is the answer clear to you? That's why we got this number as same. Because it's the amount of fine that will remain in the overflow. So both the conditions are already fixed. So overflow condition is also fixed and fine is also fixed. So if I fix these two parameters, irrespective of whichever is the product or whichever is the reject, it will always come same.
So sir, like this is not like something that is directly required in the problem. Like uh, everything is same, like the overflow and fines. So,
Yeah, everything is same, but this was asked in the question. See that,
separately.
yeah,
Yes.
calculate the tonnage of fines that remains in the overflow. So that will come same in both the cases.
Yes. Sir.
The reason is, that was my question. The reason is because I have specified that it has to be fine and it has to be in overflow. So here I am not specifying irrespective of which one is product or which one is reject, doesn't matter. Because both the conditions are specified here. It has to be in overflow and it has to be fine. So for a specific process, these two, if I fix these two combination, obviously I will get a same number. Is that answer clear to you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and regarding the exam, please follow the instruction that I sent through the email. Like I had specified you that if you find any difficulty in uh, uploading the documents, just send it to the TAs, and the TA's email address I had sent it long time back. Now at the exam, if you like, we have 240 students in this class. Like almost 100 of you started shouting that what should I do? What should I do? You suggest me what should I do in that case? Had you been in my place, what should you do? When all the instructions were already given. That if you have, I know that this kind of problem can come. And I am taking this offline mode of exam like in, this is kind of to give you a feel of how your offline exam would be. Like if I give you this MCQ, I cannot give you partial marking if you do the problem partially right. So that is not possible. Which is not fair because in the offline exam we do give partial marking. So that's why I take all this pain and all this number checking to 240, answer script checking, all these things I'm taking pain so that you can get a feel of offline exam sitting at your home. But if you do not follow the instruction, what should I do? You suggest me something so that we can conduct the exam in a more smooth way. Some suggestion I need from you, because the first time I take this exam for your batch. So what should I do? You suggest me something. If it is possible, I will obviously do it. I wanted to take suggestions from you because you are the one who is giving the exam. Any suggestion what we can do to make it more smooth? Keeping in mind that internet problem and all these things might come during uploading the answer script and all these things.
So you can give extra 10 to 15 minutes for the upload.
Yeah, 10 minutes gets given for the extra. So if you upload after 6, the exam will end at 6. 10 minutes extra time was given for uploading.
Sir, is it possible to have a MCQ type exam or numerical input type exam?
Yeah, I can give you a MCQ type of exam, but there will be no part marking in that case. Are you happy with that? I have no problem.
So in MCQ, the partial marking we will not get.
Partial marking you will not get. If you do it partially right, and if you do some calculation mistake at the end, you will get absolutely 0. And that is what I don't want, because this is course is a conceptual thing. So you might think something conceptually right. Yeah.
But some error margin could be kept, like instead of MCQ, numerical or fill in the blanks kind of questions, where we put in the actual decimal value.
Yeah, same problem. Like if you do, suppose you are calculating the screen efficiency, you put all this formula right, but somehow you put this number wrong while calculating, you will get a different number here. But ideally,
Yes,
you will get completely full number. Only I deduct only maybe 0.5 out of 4. You will get 3.5. In calculation,
so you can take 2 tests. So you can 2 tests and that one with best out of 2.
Yeah, I'm taking 3 steps and 3 tests, and I'm taking best out of 2. That is possible, but you have for 240 students. I cannot make different question for 240 students. That is also not feasible.
So maybe like keep like one question which is long like this, and then like 5 small MCQ questions like which are based on
the same problem will again come, like while uploading the answer script, because you are not following the instruction, you will come up with a question like, what should I do now, because some things are not working. Because in online mode, the technological problem is something which is not in my hand. The simplest way is just send the email, send the answer script through email. So that is the other option which I had kept. MCQ type of question I can make. That's not a problem. But how to stop the malfunctioning in the exam? That is something which would be more difficult. Because if I put MCQ question, if someone knows the answer, they can pass. It's an open discussion question. Exam.
Sir, subjective exam is only better. Like in the other subjects also, we have subjective only. Like for MCQs, like for the other part of mechanical operations, we faced a lot of problem. It was MCQ pattern.
So yes, sir, in Sam Babu sir's test, sir, the huge cheating was there, and sir is telling that he will take the test again.
Yeah, I know that. I can foresee that problem will come. I can foresee most of the problem which can come. That's why I took all the precautions, so that you also don't face any problem. Like while uploading the stuff, if you face any problem, but many of you are asking me at the end, like things are not uploading in the Teams. What should I do now? What should you do? That was already emailed.
So like maybe we can keep the deadline as 10 minutes more for scanning and uploading, but with a 5 minutes late submission margin. So the link we can still submit till 6:15, for example, but after 6:10 onwards, it may be considered as late submission. Sir.
That is what was given. Like after 6, if you have uploaded, you will see that you are 10 minutes late or 5 minutes late or 2 minutes late. 10 minutes margin was given.
So actually, I got 1 minute late because of the scanning and all, but after 6:10 the link wasn't available to
Yeah,
upload my
6:10
answer.
6:10 was not the deadline. The deadline was 6 and 6:10
Oh,
was
okay,
the
sir.
ultimate closure time. It was given there. If you see my email, I have written that the exam is still 6. You have 10 extra minutes for uploading stuff, and after 6:10 it will close.
Oh, okay, sir.
So whatever you are
Sir,
suggesting,
it
I have
will,
implemented already.
sir, it will be best to subject via email, sir. Then we
Yeah,
will not face these issues.
yeah. Again, 240 students. Again, if you keep on emailing, then whoever email it,
Sir, not to you, like rather
On
keep
Moodle
it
we can
aside
You can
submit.
create a
TAs.
separate email address for that, sir. You can create a separate email address for that.
yeah, that is fine. But the email address is something which I had kept when you have any problem in uploading. If you can upload, just upload. If you don't have any problem in uploading, then what's the problem in uploading? It's the same thing, because email also you have to attach. If you cannot upload, there is no problem. Just email. That is what I said. And email address was also given. And some of you were asking what is the email address of TS at 6:15. So this is something which you should also help me out, because I need your cooperation also in conducting this huge number of students exam. Just follow the instruction what I have written in the email. If you follow the instruction, you will not have any question at the end. 6, your exam ends. 6:10 is the ultimate time of uploading. If you started doing the stuff and started uploading, if you see any problem, directly send it to the TS. You can, in fact, you can start uploading in your email as well as in team together. If team works, fine. Otherwise, send it to TA. And you can make a draft before the exam. Just put the TA's name in 2 and make the draft. Once your answer is ready, just upload that and send it. If you cannot upload in Teams, because Teams is something when multiple people keep on uploading, it creates problem. I know. So that was the other option that I had. An MCQ type of question, if you want, it would be pretty easy for me to make MCQ type of question. But again, this part marking and everything, that you will not get. There is no scope.
Sir, I was saying like in Moodle, like 240 students, the uploading would be an issue or not? Like, I think in
Yeah,
Moodle,
it
the
would be a
system
huge
is.
issue, because in last year's batch, they specifically told me not to take exam in Moodle, because if you keep on refreshing the Moodle server go down, and it creates a lot of problem.
Oh,
I
okay,
took the suggestion from your last batch, and they specifically told me, please don't take it in Moodle.
okay, sir.
So that's why I didn't take it in Moodle. You see, the
Sir,
MS team is not working correctly. Moodle is even worse
Oh,
in handling loads. Anyways, do you want MCQ type of exam? Then I can take MCQ type of exam
No,
in the
sir.
next one.
No, sir. No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir. No, sir.
So the subjective part is okay.
Yeah, but I need your
Yes,
help
sir.
in that perspective. Just follow the instruction. At the end, don't like fill my inbox with lot of chats and emails and all these things, and asking the question which I had already answered in my email. What should I do now? And this 10-minute late, 5-minute late, don't worry, because that was written in the email. Like, you have 10 minutes extra for uploading. That 10 minutes extra is the span at which you can upload. So once the upload window is gone, then you cannot upload. That's a complete exam decorum, right? That is also we follow in exam. Like, sometime we get 5 minutes before we get a warning that, okay, you have 5 minutes left, you upload, you tie up your answer script and all this, and then submit. So from the next exam, just please help me out in conducting this one. So that would be helpful for me also. Okay, answer. I am not going through the answer again, because I had given the complete answer here, and because you don't have much questions, so we can proceed with the next topic. And the complexity of the question was fine, or it was too complex or too easy, or any comment on that?
So the question 1 was easy, but the question 2 means we have to understand the question. There are some.
Yeah, so that is fine. I mean, it's not too complex.
Sir, in the first question only, like whatever I had studied from the PPTs and the references you gave, but like I didn't get the idea that the tonnage of fines would be used to determine the which would be better, like coarser or fine. So I had the idea only that effectiveness was a sufficient measure to take an industrial screen, but tonnage I had no idea. Yes, sir.
Yeah, those things, those type of question you can expect. So you are in IIT and you can expect some tricky question. It's not all everything will come from exactly what we teach, but things were within the domain what we have discussed. It's not completely out of our domain.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so let's start with the next topic. So which is like this was the entire chart of the course. So as you know that we had completely finished all these topics, that is particle characterization part is completely over now. So given a particle, now you are in a position to characterize it in an engineered way. The next part of this course, which is basically the heart of the entire mechanical operation course, that is called size reduction. This particle characterization and size reduction is something which is very unique to this course only. And next part will come as separation, where we will see the classification, solid liquid dynamics, filtration, sedimentation, all these things. These are something which we will again encounter some part in mass transfer operations. But this particle characterization and size reduction, these two are something, and the storage of storage, handling, transport, this thing also. This thing is very unique to this course only, which you will not encounter in other courses. Okay, the next part topic is size reduction, so that we will start today. So these are the books. Again, I think I had given you the soft copy of most of the books. So this is a very famous book. I think most of you have this one, the Mackay-Smith Unit Operation of Chemical Engineering. If you don't have this one, just you can either buy it or you can get this one in online, the PDF copy. And if you don't have, if you have any problem in getting the PDF copy, just email me. I can give you later on. The rest 3 books I have given. This one doesn't have any PDF copy, only the hard copy which I have, but unfortunately you people are not here, so it's not possible for me to give you the PDF one. Okay, and relevant journal paper that I will discuss some topics in this size reduction, which I'll give you the journal papers also. Okay, so size reduction or comminution, this is a term which is used. And this is an operation that is, you can understand, this is omnipresent, and it is there in all the industries. Like you can name any industry which is not having this process. There is no such industry which exists. This doesn't have any process, any comminution or size reduction process. It's everywhere. Like preparation of catalyst, starting from preparation of catalyst and storage, handling. Everything. Whenever you wanted to reduce the particle size to a desired one, which you need for the process, you have to go through this one. Now, when I am talking about comminution or crushing or grinding, the basic thing is I want to break a particle, right? I have some solid particle which I wanted to break. Now, I'm giving you a chalk, the chalk that we use to write over the blackboard. Just take a chalk. And you wanted to break this chalk. Now, can any one of you tell me the basic processes that you has to go through to break this chalk? You take the chalk in between 2 fingers and press it, right? So if you press it hard, after a certain point, the chalk will break. Now, the entire process, if I ask you to divide the entire process in different segments, so what is the first step that you have to do to break any particle? Just take the chalk as an example that will make you understand the overall general idea of how to break the particle. Like you take a chalk and you wanted to break it. So what is the basic step that you have to do first?
Apply some force.
Apply force.
Yes, right. Apply force. So apply some forces. Now this some forces is what? As an engineer, we had to quantify like how much force is needed to break that particle. Like if you can
force.
Come again.
Compressive stress. Sir,
Yeah, compressive stress is something which is a different way of saying the force. It's the same thing, but if I ask you to quantify this, how much force you need to break this particle? Okay, you can put additional forces also, that is not a problem, but additional force comes with something, that is additional energy that you are investing, which may not be needed. Okay, that I will come later on, like how much force is exactly needed. So once you apply a force to a specific particle, so what would be the next step? So once you apply the force, the particle will directly break, or is there any in between step?
Sir, pulverization.
That is too complicated. Just think on a specific, just the example of chalk.
So it also depends, like if the particle has some specific shape, the orientation also matters. Like how are you applying the force?
Yeah,
Different amount of forces will be required.
That is true. That is when we wanted to quantify the force. But suppose you apply the force and the particle, you apply the sufficient force to break the particle, then the particle breaks. Now, is there any in between phenomena or step between your application of force and the ultimate breakage of the particle?
Compaction?
Not exactly.
Sir, elasticity, then after crossing elastic limit and something like that.
Yeah, after crossing elastic limit, it will break down.
Yes.
But will it directly break? I don't know whether you can visualize it. I am thinking of any process where you can directly visualize it.
So sort of deformation will take.
Yeah, but suppose now you think the particle is not deformable, it's a very rigid one. Now what will happen?
Sir, some internal forces will build up inside the particle for a certain amount of time, and then when the yield strength will get crossed, it will break.
It will break, but before breaking, you will see some formation of cracks. Do you agree with me? Before it completely breaks down, you will see some formation of cracks. And those cracks basically propagates and eventually breaks the particle.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
right.
Sir.
So it might happen that you haven't given sufficient force so that the particle ultimately breaks, but it can form a crack. Like you press the particle at a sudden force, you see that it forms some crack inside or outside it, but the particle is still intact. Right. So that's an intermediate step. Like you press the particle, some crack will form inside the particle because it is crossing the yield stress, and this crack will eventually propagate and break the particle. So these are the basic steps. Right. Now what can be the different type of forces that we can apply to particle, which is given here? The different type of forces can be compression, shear, impact, attrition, or by cutting or tearing. What is the difference between shear and attrition? This answer I want from you. If you don't know the answer, you can give me in the next class also. What is the difference between shear and attrition?
Sir, in shear, like the
I know most of you have the feeling like you know what is the difference, but you cannot say it explicitly exactly what is the difference.
So maybe we use the advantage of different particles having different shapes, and because of the particles are constrained to move only in free spaces, but since we have a lot of particles,
no, that is not the difference. That is not the difference.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, attrition will be like working on the surface of the particle. Like shear cuts out a it will cut out layer. Like I think shear like works more on the bulk and attrition is more on the surface of the particle in concern.
Not exactly true. Do you encounter this term attrition in fluid mechanics? I think all of you had already gone through the basics of fluid mechanics. Did you encounter this term attrition?
No,
So the shear we have encountered.
Shear you have encountered. I know. I know shear you have encountered. But attrition is something which you are encountering here when you have particles instead of fluid. So what is the difference? Now you come up with a specific answer in the next class. Otherwise, I'll obviously tell you, but you just look into it and come up with a specific answer. Just the difference. You think of the difference between the fluid and here you have powders or particles.
So maybe in attrition, the particles rub against each other. Like there is some like movement along the surface. And shear, we directly apply a force on one part of the particle and it cuts into pieces.
Yeah, but in shear also you can move the particle if you shear it.
Yes.
In fluid mechanics, you have that is one of the way of transporting the particle, transport the fluid. You come up with a better answer next class. Otherwise, I will tell you. Just think on it. So compression impact shearing loads are used for breaking the brittle materials like coal, minerals, whereas the fibrous materials, for the fibrous material, it's obviously that you cannot break it like this. So you have to use the cutter for that one. This is the mechanism of size reduction, which I was talking about. First, you apply the stress. Then the applied stress with what? It will generate some strain. And this strain will eventually lead to a point when you will have fractures in lines of the weakness inside a particle. Now, when I'm writing the fracture in lines of weakness, what does that mean?
So where the
cracks
inside the
will occur.
The bonding is not strong.
Bonding is not strong. Yeah.
So the cracks means after the stress is applied, then some strain is generated. Yes. Then the cracks will occur. Means which is the weakest point. Means some of the forces between the particles is very less there.
I mean, your point is right. What you wanted to say is right, but maybe I can give you a better idea, or maybe I can say the same thing in a different way. So you have a particle. Like, do you think that the particle is always absolutely homogeneous? Like, if we do a what I can say, if you do a stress analysis of the particle, like if you wanted to see how much the particle can, the stress the particle can withstand at every point of the particle, let's go into microscopic regime. So you will not find, or you will never find any particle in the entire world where it is completely homogeneous everywhere. If you go to micro scale or even in atomic scale, you will see some kind of inhomogeneity everywhere, and those point of inhomogeneity is the source of weakness. So when you apply a stress, those points will generate the initial fragment or crack inside the particle. Even if you take a completely homogeneous particle, still you will see this type of phenomena. Now for different crystalline particle and all these things, there are planes which are relatively weak, or which are basically the plane where you will find the formation of cracks or breakage. But for an irregular shape particle, these are the weak points. Now to identify those weak points is something which is very difficult. So it is to pre-estimate the point where from the crack will form. That is still a relatively difficult topic of research itself. Even if mathematically you cannot find out the point where from the crack will exactly propagate or generate. Have you been exposed to heat transfer? Second year batch, I
somewhat.
know, don't know. I don't know they were not. Third year? Third year batch also, no, you haven't went to the heat transfer process, right? Okay, forget about heat transfer. Let's take a common example from our daily life. So you have seen the boiling of water at your home.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
So you put a liquid, put a water in a ball or in something, and then you keep on hitting it from the bottom. So at one point you will see some formation of bubbles, right? At the surface, at the heating surface. Then this is, I think all of you have seen. And eventually those bubbles go up and then they rupture at the top. So you have seen this thing, right?
Yes, sir.
So now again, this is kind of similar topic, like where the first bubble will form. This is again, if you take a completely smooth surface, atomistically smooth, still you cannot predict. Using your all the knowledge of theory, all the knowledge of mathematics, everything, you cannot predict the location of first bubble. So once you have the first bubble, then you can say that, okay, the other bubble will form here, other will form here. There are mathematics and there are complex physics involved, which you can use to predict now how things will progress. But where the first one will come, that you cannot say. Same is the case here. Where the first crack will form, it is difficult. It is impossible to predict that point. So that's why we always use this term, fracture in lines of weakness. So in lines of weakness is something which is omnipresent. Again, you cannot find it before and predict that therefrom the particle will break. But once it started forming a crack here, it will now propagate, and the direction of propagation and all these things, this you can predict. This is something which you can predict, again, which is not beyond the scope of this course to investigate on that part, but this is something which is predictable. Yes.
Sir, but like you said, the initial weakness point we cannot find, like it is topical research or whatever, like, but the propagation is found, but the crack will obviously propagate along the part like which is the weakest. So we must have the knowledge that where along which line the particle is the weakest for the crack to propagate. Then only it will be predicted.
Yeah, that is not so easy to answer right now. The question that you have, like once you form a crack or once the particle started to break at a specific point of the particles, anyways, it's inside or it's on the surface of the particle. It depends on many factors, like where the next, in which direction the crack will propagate. It's not always that you have a line of weakness around that point. You may not have. There's a lot of solid mechanics involved, which is kind of beyond the scope of this class, but still you can think of once you have a weak point known, then there are mathematical tools or there are like physical understanding which you can use to predict along which direction this crack will form. Remember, this particle may not be crystalline, may not be homogeneous always. It may be completely a different type of particle, where for a crystalline particle still you have some idea of the plane of propagation once the crack is formed. But for a non-crystalline particle, for a brittle particle, for particle like glass, amorphous particle, for all those particles, it is difficult. It is difficult to find out the lines of weakness before you start this breaking experiment. If there's a manufacturing problem, if there is a line of weakness which is already present, which is visible, then you can say that, okay, this breakage will propagate along this direction. But if it is not there, then it is difficult to predict like exactly where from the crack will start to propagate. But once you start to propagate, there are physics, there are tools which you can use. There are like simulations, or there are mathematical tools which is available. But again, those are stochastic modeling. Those are not deterministic. But using this stochastic modeling, you can get some idea or get some direction of the propagation.
So that is still probability.
That is still probability. That is still probability. You cannot absolutely predict, but the probability is high that it will break or it will propagate in that direction.
Okay, sir.
Okay. For specific type of particles, for specific, there are few materials for which you can predict it. It's deterministic. Mostly like crystallines, where the plane of crystal and all these things are known. But for most of the things, it's a stochastic process. You cannot predict it. And the initial point of start of crack, that is unknown. So you can understand this process is completely complex once you go into the physics, but we will not go into that detail. What we want to break the particle. We are working in an industry, we want to break the particle, and what is our main motive? Our main motive is to estimate the energy which is needed to break this particle, so that we can make or fabricate instrument accordingly, which can fulfill our whole entire desire. Physics part, we will not go into that detail. I'll just briefly touch upon, but we will not go into that detail. So fracture of line of weakness. So this is something which I was talking about. If you press the top and bottom surface here, so you can okay, can you see my cursor? I hope you can see. So this is two planes which you are compressing, and you can see that it will form some cracks here, and the crack will propagate along this direction. It will eventually break. Same is the case. So these two are example here between two rolls. If a particle is trapped between two rolls which are moving, so the crack might propagate, form somewhat inside, and again it can propagate in different direction. Formation is unknown and propagation is probabilistic. Okay. Well, after all, at the end, what will happen? So because you are putting some energy, and some energy is releasing in forms of forming some new surfaces, so it will release heat eventually. So that is the entire mechanism. First you pull stress, that will generate strain inside the particle. This will create fracture of lines in weakness, and it will break, and eventually it will release some heat. So grinding is achieved by mechanical stress followed by rupture, and the energy required. This energy, the energy required, which you are giving here in forms of stress, that depends upon obviously the hardness of the material and the tendency of the material to crack. That is known as friability. This is some of the physical property which I had discussed at the initial part of the course. Now this force that you have applied may be compression, may be impact, may be shear, and both the magnitude of force and the time you are applying, that will affect the extent of grinding that you wanted to achieve. Now the force that you are applying, the time that is involved, or the time for which you are applying the force on the particle, both involves energy. So energy is something which will not free of cost, so which will come with price. So this is something which we wanted to minimize and make our devices fabricate accordingly, so that we can break the particle to our desired size. This is the whole motive. Again, the same mechanism. Here you have a particle which is, don't look at this F's. These F's are confusing. So you have particle between these two what I can say, these two walls, and which you are pushing from the top and bottom. From the top wall you are pushing here, you can see that once you reach to a point where the critical force that is required to generate a crack or expose the weakness inside a particle, you reach to that point by applying the force on the top and on the top wall. You will see the formation of weaknesses, the formation of cracks, and this crack will, again, if you keep on pushing it, the crack will propagate, and eventually it will break the particle into multiple size. Okay, that is the whole entire mechanism. Now the energy for size reduction, the energy required for the size reduction, that is the whole motive which I was saying, that this is something which we wanted to figure out how much energy is needed for size reduction. Now for efficient grinding, the energy applied to the material. Okay, go back to this image again. Initial condition, the second condition, I am applying stress to the particle. The third condition is the point at which you generate the crack inside the particle. And if you push it a little bit harder than this point, the particle will break. Now, how to find out this force, which is exactly needed to find out to break the particle? The initial question that I asked, like you have the chalk, and how much pressure you should give in your, you should have in your fingers, which is exactly required to break the particle. We don't want to exceed that limit, because once we exceed that limit, that's why we are then we are giving more energy to the particle, which is not required, and this energy is coming with a cost, right? And to make the entire this breaking process in very efficient, we will apply only that energy which is sufficient to break the particle, not more than that. So that is an efficient energy breakage in a particle breaking process. So that is what is written here. For efficient grinding, the energy applied to the material should exceed by as small as margin as possible to the minimum energy needed to rapture the material. So the minimum energy that is needed to rapture the material, we will put only that much of energy, not more than that, to make the process efficient. How and what is the theory behind it, all these things, that is the whole purpose of this subsection. So as you can understand, the exceeded energy which you are giving will be lost as a heat, and that is something which is not desirable. This is also something which you will see once we calculate the efficiency of the process, that grinding is a very inefficient process, and it is important to use the energy as efficient as possible. You will see that how much cost is involved in grinding or breaking the particle in an industry, and if you exceed the energy that is required, how much money you can lose, or how much cost you have to bear extra if you calculate it wrong. So there are theories which mostly very popular and used to predict how much energy is needed to break the particle. So mostly we encounter 3 theories or 3 laws, which is very popular, and these 3 theories and 3 laws are based on very basic assumptions. We will discuss all these assumptions and all these things, which correlates the energy that is required to break the particle of length L, or you can say that you have a particle of characteristic length L. You wanted to make a change of delta L in the characteristic length of the particle. So if you wanted to make a change of delta L, obviously you have to put a stress on the particle, then and then only its characteristic size will change, because it's a solid, it's not a particle. So the energy that is required to make a change of delta L in the characteristic length of a particle which is having a length of L is correlated by these 3 theories. Now this delta L and L is related by some mathematical functions. General correlation is the amount of the differential energy that you are supplying, if that is equal to dW, that is correlated with the delta L change of characteristic length in the particle to the length of the particle in this function, in this general function, to the power n. This n is something which depends on many factors, many assumptions, and depending on your system also. So dW, how this dW, the amount of energy required, this is something which we wanted to find out, and this is the resultant. So you have a particle, you wanted to break the particle. So initial point is to make some changes in the length of the particle, and if that some change is delta L, this is a very general form of looking into it. Once we solve or once we see the specific problem, things would be more clear. But this is a very general form. So that is what is written here. So we will be reading or discussing 3 theories, which depends on the basic assumption that work done or energy required to produce a change in delta n in the particle of typical size dimension L is simple power function of L, which is written here L to the power n. It's a very simple way of looking into it, and the proportionality constant is C here. Where dW is the differential work done, dl is the change in the typical dimension, and L is the characteristic length. Characteristic length, I hope you understand. It's the when we discuss on the particle dimension, that specific characteristic length here. If you have a irregular particle, it's the derived diameter, nothing else. Right. So this is how we mathematically put this energy required form in terms of a differential equation. So I will start with the 3 theories in the next class. So I'll stop here because we don't have much time left to start a new topic. Okay, so any questions so far? You will get to understand this law in a better way once we go through the theories. I hope just you get a brief idea of the different stages of breaking of particle. Once the mechanism that is involved behind breaking a particle, that was the whole discussion of today's class, and how to quantify this in terms of energy, that we will do in the next class. Fine. So if you have any question, you can stay, otherwise you can leave.